not endorse anybody. We just listen to them and hear what they have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else for public comment this morning? Good morning, Mr. Spells.
John Spells, 106 Citrus Lane. Normally, I always have issues, and I might as well get it started, but I kind of feel like, as commissioners, y'all kind of let the people down, because from my understanding, I come to find out that they're charging now to take debris and stuff to the landfill. Is that so? I find it really, to me, to be unfair, because I pay a garbage fee, and I do not even put garbage out there, no more than in a burn barrel for the little bit of stuff I burn. Now, you know, you got it solid up to now, code enforcement, in which at one time, Mr. Flagg, you did made a remark to code enforcement. We got these laws on the books, and we need to enforce it. So I feel like y'all just sought the people up to sick the dogs on them, because you got a lot of old houses and stuff that's got to be torn down and cleaned up in yards, but then you turn around and put a fee on people cleaning up, and I find it really, you know, unfair to the people that don't really benefit from putting garbage out. But then you send code enforcement around to tell them they got to clean up the yard, and then you got Mr. Gas waiting at the landfill to receive on the other end. When I was fighting against the Better Place plan, y'all call it, and I said it was a scam. You know, y'all said if y'all got that Better Place plan money, what y'all could do and all of this here, and ever since then, the citizens has been tax after tax after tax, and it wasn't nothing but a setup. And I looked today in the paper where y'all had in there about the mowing for 4 to 5 times. I was out on West River Road last week, and I didn't know it would actually take and I'm not knocking the guys, but it took 3 days for them to go from Palmetto Bluff back to 17 picking up the debris and stuff along the roads. There's a dog under a towel on West River Road in front of Wayne McLean. That dog got hit last year. Nobody never came out to pick that dog up, and that dog still laying along that road with that same towel on it. And to me, you know, all these here little jumps and loops that y'all keep throwing at the people, people do not have the money to keep jumping through the hoops. And I hope, if y'all can't get it right, I hope voting time, the people get some more people in there. Because y'all spending money and just taxing the people to death, and there's nowhere in the world that we can actually survive with y'all. Every little loophole y'all can get money out of the citizens, y'all come up with a new law or something to get more money out of it. Then you got all these high salary people just sitting on the time clock as county workers and not doing anything. Because to me now, I'm not knocking nobody, but for us to have 2 attorneys, you know, if you're gonna have 2 spare tires in the trunk of your car, it don't make sense. Either you get 1 good tire and ride on down the road, or either you just don't waste the taxpayers' money. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Miss Judith York. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Judith York. I live at 142 Drayton Island Road on Georgetown. I'm just here to support. You have on item number 7 on Public Works is asking you to approve the contracts. This is the new contracts for Taylor Engineering to do the specific work for Drayton Island Ferry as well as Fort Gates. A lot of work and discussion has gone in through this grant to bring it back into compliance and follow the protocol for administration. I think Putnam County Public Works is now on track. They're doing a very thorough job, and I'd like to expedite this as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. York. Okay, anybody else? Ms. Ruckowitz, come forward, please. Morning.
Wanda Ruckowitz, 106 Taylor Street, Interlaken, Florida. I just want to know, have we decided about the mosquito spraying? I'm getting really worried, especially where the children wait for buses and it's really grown up and there's a lot of water there. Have we come up with a solution for that? Are we going to have mosquito spraying?
We always spray for mosquitoes.
Well, Mr. Liable,
Last year was a very wet year, and
we
they
only
were
had
abundant.
it once where I lived, one time, okay? And I'm worried about that. That Zika is not a good thing.
Well, we're certainly,
And I just want to know that you know that this is really important. This is a really bad thing, and it can become an epidemic.
yeah.
So I'd like to know, you know, maybe you put it in the newspaper, whatever you're gonna do, we need to have this done in this community, because it's a lot of wetlands out here.
The Zika virus threat, and we have confirmed cases in St. Johns and Alachua counties.
Yes.
But they're daytime biters. They're not night, they're just the opposite, so I'm not sure where the state's going with that, but our program's intact like it always has, and I have to remind you, he sprays at night. You might be sleeping when he comes by. It typically works when the mosquitoes are active in the nighttime. Mr. Bob Hatton, he's been with us a long time, does a good job.
Do we only have one sprayer?
We have one sprayer for the
Oh,
whole county.
sir, do you know how big this county is?
Wi-
You
if-
can't be doing that all night long.
He does,
For the whole county?
yes. He does in zones.
You could call him and get his
I
schedule.
mean, that's just, you know, kind of strange to me. This is a big county.
Mm-hmm.
And then he can do it in one night?
Yeah.
It didn't cover the whole
It's
county
adequate.
one night.
Not in
Oh,
one
that's
night.
what I was thinking,
Zones,
yeah.
we work it in zones.
Okay,
The different zones, and sometimes we get additional assistance from the state if we have a very, we were right on the verge of it last year for
I think we
asking
need to
assistance.
do it this
but,
time. Maybe we need to go to the state. One of us needs to go up there and find out, say, we need it here, because we've got the confirmed cases.
Yeah, well, it'll be a while before they start biting. We've had a couple cold snaps, and that helps too.
Okay, thank you. I just,
Okay.
it's the kids,
All right?
okay?
Thank you.
Yes, Reverend K. Moore, come forward, please.
Leroy Camo, 117 Gladys Avenue, East Palaca, Florida, 32131. Mr. Chip, I've heard you say on the mosquito control, and we only have one truck. Our problem is, on that particular situation is, we call for them to come out that way. They never get off the highway. You know, we live back in there on Gladys. Years ago, they used to come in and they would go down the streets and go through, go around the church and come back out up there. But now they don't do that. Now, the next thing, the gentleman right over there, he was informing me about the Dog Branch Canal. And on that Dog Branch Canal, I know for a fact that an easement was given to Putnam County because the Board of County Commissioners, before y'all time, at that time, they fixed up the papers. They gave the clipboard to me. I went from 207A to 207. Everybody in the area signed the easement. 2 weeks later, they start cleaning the canal because they said they had to have an easement. So now, later on years, what happened to the easement? He said they don't have one now. But I know they had one because I went out and I got it and hand delivered it back to the Board of County Commissioners at that time.
I can't answer that question. Like you said, it's before my time.
Mr. Chairman, Reverend Kamo, do you have an approximate time frame, what year?
But the latter part of 67 or the first part of 68, because that was the holdup. They didn't have an easement to put a drag line in there.
They may be able to do the research if they're able to determine.
Now,
the
that's
time
what I
frame.
told the gentleman this
Okay.
morning.
Okay, I'm sure he's made note of that and that they will at least drill down on that and find out whether there is a way to use that information for what we need now.
Now, do y'all foresee anytime soon y'all gonna be working on this?
That will be discussed, Mr. Chairman, in the 2 o'clock.
Transportation meeting today.
meeting this afternoon, and I can call you with an update if you're not able to be there.
2 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
All right. I wish I had something else to put on you, but the buzzer doesn't ring.
Okay, anybody else for public comment this morning? All right, seeing none, we're gonna move to the consent agenda. He's at item 7. So Commissioners, I've been asked to pull item F, and item H, we are gonna pull that completely from the agenda. So I will entertain a motion.
Both being pulled from, for,
Yes, H is permanently pulled,
okay.
and F will be up for discussion. Everything else, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I so move that we approve consent agenda items A, B, C, D, E, and G.
Second.
Sorry. Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, it carries. Okay, let's go to page number 29 through 59. Ms. Sparkman, you pulled this, if you're ready. Come forward.
Mr. Chairman, while she's coming, can we introduce the summary highlights of it and the recommended action?
Please, sir.
Approval to apply for both EMS rural grant and EMS matching grant to purchase video laryngoscope. Should rural grant be awarded, county's match would be $1,181. Should rural grant not be awarded, then matching grant will be considered, with county's match being $2,852.20 if awarded. The recommended action coming from the Fire EMS Department is approve applying for both the EMS rural grant and EMS matching grant to purchase the video laryngoscope, and authorize chairman to sign the grant application. Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Sparkman?
Okay, when I saw this on the consent agenda, I said to my husband, please go Google and pull that word up. He did. There's 2 doctors that run it. You all need to look at it, because what they have to do is they put this scope down you, and if they hit your voice box, you're done permanently. You'll never be able to speak again. And a doctor on the Google says it has to be done by a doctor, because this is serious. So if you're in an ambulance and we don't have trained doctors doing this, I'm sorry, you're opening the county up for a bunch of lawsuits. That's what, when I see something bad on the agenda, I go look it up on the computer, and that's what I did. And I think all you need to do that. Please do not approve this or postpone it till you all have a chance to look at that video. Thank you.
Mr. Leary, we don't have anybody from EMS here this morning, do we?
No, sir.
Do you know anything about this piece of equipment?
No, I'm sorry, I don't.
Okay, I don't think anybody in the room does. Anybody know about laryngoscopes? I think the video improves the chance of not hitting the area you were just talking about. They do it in the blind now, and they do have a lot of lawsuits in this area. Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, this does have everything to do with the person that is in need of emergency services under the, they call it Dr. 100, when they're having a cold, and when they have to intubate a patient, it's very important to them to get it in its proper place as far as the airway is concerned. And so this particular video laryngoscope is to enhance and improve and make sure we are where we ought to be, rather than blind, because they do have to do this in the field. So it's no question about whether or not it has to be done. This is about enhancing the abilities for it to be done on point, and to be done in such a manner that they don't create the issue that Ms. Sparkman is raising.
Yeah, and Ms. Sparkman, I can tell you, sitting on the insurance board for all these commissioners and the citizens, we settle claims every 3 months, and doing this blindly, about once a year, a paramedic gets it wrong. And I know that this piece of equipment probably improves the chances of not getting it wrong. So I think that it's a very good piece of equipment, and if we don't have it, we do need it, and I know that. Any other comments?
I think your other option is death.
If you get it wrong, yeah, it's,
Well, I'm saying
It's
if
not.
you need this done,
oh, yeah.
I mean, it's no talking or death, right?
Yeah.
All right, you made my mind up.
Anybody else? Okay, what you want to do
So
with it?
move.
Got a motion on the floor for approval?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Okay. That includes our consent agenda, I do believe. Next item, Ms. Linda Myers, our tax collector, is with us today, and you're up on the agenda. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm taking the liberty of passing out the next specialty plate. You know, when I have this opportunity to address you, I like to talk about the specialty plates that are out there. And after you take a peek at it, I'll just mention it on my way out this morning. But I am here to talk about something very important and something our citizens here in Putnam County have been asking for. In 2014, a pilot program was put in place by the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services to see if it would be efficient and effective to distribute and take applications for concealed weapons permits. The pilot program was very successful. 6 tax collectors worked with the department to see, is this the right thing for the department, for the citizens, and did it work in the tax collector offices? After that successful pilot in 2015, they opened it up to the other 60-plus tax collectors that had not participated yet, and we got in line and were approved last May. That's how long this takes. In your packet, there's a letter. We were approved for this May of 2015, and we are finally there. The reason we haven't brought it to your attention yet is because we're already having constant phone calls, and I thought if we talked about it in May of last year, we would be expectations out there that it was any minute now, and we knew there was going to be quite a lag. But it is here now. The actual fingerprinting machine came in last month, and we are in line. Everything is just rolling out from the department slowly but smoothly. So to that point, I have constant questions about this. People have been wanting this locally. You know, if you don't do it locally, the old way was to do it through the mail, and it was extremely time-consuming. Now, of course, our neighbor, St. Johns County, has been issuing permits for about 6 months. And a lot of our folks, we said, listen, we're months away. Please go use the St. Johns County facility. It's close. But we are now within 30 days. So we wanted to let you know, and this is an opportunity for the citizens to find out what's happening in their county government and in their tax collector's office. So to give you the highlights, you have a little information there because I think people will be asking you. I hear concealed weapons. Do you know anything about it? So you have a little detail sheet about what it takes to get a concealed weapons. And it's just just kind of a little snapshot. There are people who are not eligible. And in your little snapshot, I say that is a long list. Go to the department website to find out if you're not eligible. In general, if you meet certain criteria, you're eligible. But there are some specifics. And so I suggest to people, if they don't have one and are interested, to go to the Department of Agriculture Consumer Services, click on the big button that says concealed weapons, and they'll get a lot of the information. And the other thing that I didn't really come to talk about too much, but I gave you a copy, I believe, on the training. Training also is a requirement, and there's so many different ways to get the training that the best thing for our citizens is just to go to the consumer website. But I'm here to tell you the dates. We send 4 folks to Tallahassee to the Department of Ag on March 1st, and they're going to take 2 classes on March 1st and March 2nd. And then they will be back in the office, and the Department of Agriculture rolls into our office on March 7th. They will be installing equipment all day on the 7th. And on the 8th, we'll be training one more time. And then on Wednesday the 9th, we are open for business. So I just want to make sure everybody in the audience, please share that with the other citizens. On March 9th, which is a Wednesday, we are open for business. And what does that mean? If you don't have a concealed weapon, you may apply for one in office. Now, we can't issue it then because you have to do a background check, and the Department of Ag still does that work. All we're doing is streamlining the application process, streamlining the fingerprints. And I say that one more time because people think in the old days when you did it by mail, you had to get your own fingerprints and put it in the mail. You do not. You come straight to our office, you fill out the application online, and we have a fingerprint machine dedicated to strictly the concealed weapons permits. So on the 9th. We'll be open for business. Now, Plaque Daily News is going to cover this for us. So if there is any kind of snafu on the 8th and we're not open on the 9th, you'll see headlines, I think, on the 9th that say, not open yet. So that was to take an application. Renewals are a lot easier. If you currently have your concealed weapons permit, you get your renewal notice from the Department of Ag about 4 months to 5 months prior to the expiration. Just fill that packet out, bring it in, and we can take the application for renewal. And this is sort of breaking news. Right now, the legislature is looking at 2 tweaks to the program. One of the tweaks is to not require us to have notaries. See, in the pilot program, they were really strict on the rules and regulations to make sure it worked. But now that they see it's working, they've changed a few of those ground rules. They still required us to have a number of notaries on property to notarize citizen signatures. Right now, they're looking at striking the notary requirement. However, we do have 4 notaries on site. And then also they're looking at, which we can't do yet, is actually when you walk in the door for a renewal, you will walk out with your renewed permit in hand, just like your driver's license. Right now, we send the renewal and you get it in the mail 2 weeks later. So the legislature is looking favorably on, just like your driver's license. You walk in, you do your renewal, and you walk out with your plastic card with your new picture. So we're hoping that's going to pass because that even makes it more customer service oriented.
Well, I'd say.
So that's what's happening in your tax collector's office.
$134. I'm
For,
reading
I
here.
think that's the renewal, isn't it?
Renewal
sorry, that's the-
$72.
Yes, the new applicant is $134 and the renewal is,
72.
I don't have those in front of me.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Off the top of your head, do you know how long a license is good for?
6 years.
6 years.
6 years.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry.
Okay, Commissioner Harvey?
Go ahead, Commissioner Flagg.
Your Honor, Drew.
Ms. Myers, thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
I do some volunteering with a local hospice on fingerprinting, and some of the problems we run into is the older people's fingerprints don't show up electronically that well. Is this new system going to be able to handle that situation, or have you had any problems with that?
What you're describing is the same thing that we have with our current fingerprinting for CDL license and commercial drivers. We have to do the same thing, and depending on fingerprints, it's a struggle. It's a real struggle. Our staff is pretty good at that, but this is a new state-of-the-art paid for by the Department of Agriculture. Okay. So we're anticipating, and what we hear from our neighboring counties, that it is clearly, depending on your fingerprint depth, there's always potential issues. Okay. But these should be an improvement.
Thank you.
So we hope that to be the case.
Thank you very much.
So, Mrs. Myers,
Yes,
I'm
sir.
sorry, Commissioner Flagg, you were next. No, you go ahead, sir.
I just certainly want to commend the county. Many individuals did not understand that the state did roll out a pilot program and that they were trial implementing this in select counties. And there were some complaints that came in, well, why does St. Johns County have it and we don't, and things of that nature. But I certainly appreciate the fact that you explained it, because last year when I made application, it was very smooth. I did go, I traveled over to St. Johns County, went through the full process there, and Tom Edwards was the individual who, popped up, and it's like, he saw me, I saw him. It's like, well, I still feel like I'm in Putnam County, because Tom is serving me, but it was an awesome experience. It was very seamless. Once we went online and did that part, we came over, picture the entire electronic process. So again, the technology is there, and it's necessary for these days and times. And I understand that there were a lot of pastors lined up getting their permits, so I was in the number.
Well, it is of an interest to our community for sure. And to your point about the pilot, of course, the pilot was strict. Where was I going to go with that comment about the pilot? Oh, they rolled out after that based on the number of permits in your county. We actually ended up in the top third because we already have quite a number of concealed weapons permits existing. And one of the drivers for the for Department of Ag and Consumer Services to get this in your tax collector's office is the renewals. Somewhere in the 2007, 2010 window, concealed weapons permits were sort of very popular. Mm-hmm. And now, 6 years later, they're all renewing. and they are backlogged, and they're concerned about the backlog, that they would not be timely in getting those renewals out. So that was one of the drivers of why they looked at tax collectors' offices, which already do some state functions, and said, will this work? And let's pilot it and see. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, so the $134, that's a fee for 6 years?
Yes, sir. It's the fee for the permit, and it's good for 6 years.
Oh, that's pretty good. And one other question.
And the renewal, of course, is
Yeah.
less.
Your certificate of training, a DD 214 for military folks is still accepted?
It is. It
All
is.
right. I think that's about it.
And that just brings up one other subject about concealed weapons. With this new movement to have a concealed weapons permit, where and when and how to handle that gun, that weapon, has some strict rules associated with it. So in talking with the sheriff's office, they indicated they would be glad to come and do an information session for folks, for you all, so that you could answer questions when you're asked, but also for folks in the community who don't know what those rules are. Now I've got a permit, what does that mean? Right. So I think we should partner those two things together.
Ms. Myers,
Great service.
just to prep you a little bit, I was talking with Tommy Edwards about a week ago, and he was telling me about the permitting process. And I said, well, Tommy, how many do you do a day over there? He said about 25. I was astonished at the number.
It really is quite a few in all of the, again, did he mention what the proportion renewal to applicant is?
No, he didn't. He said, I thought it was new permits
New
that he
permits.
was talking about. But I thought you meant a week at least. He said, no, a day.
Yes,
I was
we find
blown
that's happening from other tax collectors' offices. Again, about 24 have that right now, or I think we're number 25. So that's what I have been hearing as well. We will be prepared. We
Very
will be
well.
prepared.
In the adult population in Putnam County, there are 5,663 permits issued today. or
Absolutely.
As of today.
And that's, as a proportion of our population, that's what drove us to be allowed to go early.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. Thank you. Very
So while
informative.
we're speaking of that, we're talking about law enforcement. Where is my license plate? Oh,
There were no decals on it so we couldn't use it.
and I did have to sign this out, so I'm keeping tabs on it. But what I'd like the opportunity is, as you know, there's about 180 specialty plates. And in fact, this year, I think the legislature is going to authorize another 12. So stay tuned. We're getting them all the time. But we try to highlight them periodically every month. And this is one representing the police athletic leagues. Now, these are sponsored not only by police departments, as you know, by sheriff's offices and other law enforcement agencies. But I wanted to share this with folks. We're making this visible this month. And this is one of those plates that the extra $20, or it might be $25 for this one, actually goes to support local police athletic leagues. So this money can come back to our community and do some great work, because we have very good PALs, as they're called, in our community. And with that, I should tell you that my dad was in the PAL in New York City when he was 18. And of course, he's died at 92. So this has been around for a long time, changing lives.
Linda, what was the fate of the St. Johns River license plate? Did it survive, or?
The good news and the bad news is, of course, the legislature is authorizing more plates, but they've put rules on them now. You have to pre-sell 4,000 if this new legislation passes, and you have to maintain 1,000 a year. And the St. Johns River tag is in jeopardy of not being able to continue.
Wow.
It has to have that minimum, and it has not achieved it yet in 2015. So that is the good news, bad news. Producing these plates and only selling 20 or 100 or 500, it's very costly to the state. So they are tagging it now with a cost effectiveness, but that does eliminate some of our favorite ones that maybe aren't quite as popular statewide. So I don't know the final disposition of it, but it is in jeopardy of not
Thank you.
continuing.
All right.
With that, thank you again, and I look forward to having questions from our citizens and partnering with you all to get that information out that's so needed. Thank you.
We'll do our part.
Thank you.
Okay, we thank you. Okay, we have this morning the Oversight Chairman Committee for the Better Place Plan, Mr. Ron Jones. You and your sidekick, we'll call him there, are up next. How are you, Mr. Bud? Just picking on you a little bit.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners.
Morning.
For the record, I'm Ron Jones, Chairman of the Better Place Plan Oversight Committee, P.O. Box 1029, Walaka, 32913. With me today is Bud Surratt, who is the Vice Chairman of the Oversight Committee. And I'm pleased to appear before you once again to talk about the Better Place Plan. I've done that for a few years now. And first, I'd like to, I've placed some copies of the plan on the divider behind me for anyone in the audience who would like a copy. First, I'd like to thank the members of your staff who have made our work possible. Stacy Papel and Mike Nemitz have provided data for work with us on putting this particular report together. Prior to them coming here, the staff who worked closely with us was Mike Anderson and Don Jacobowitz. They attended all of our meetings in fiscal year 2015 and worked closely with us on all of our activities, and we certainly appreciated their input over the years. Rick Leary, Yvonne Parrish, and Tony Weaver also attend all of our meetings and have been keeping us on track, and we appreciate their input. As you know, the chairman of your board is an ex officio member of our committee, and we've been pleased that in 2015, Commissioner Flagg attended our meetings. And in 2014, Chip Leibel attended meetings leading up to the referendum to renew the plan. And we certainly appreciated their participation in our discussions and their insights about the things that were influencing or impacting us at that time. Unlike some reports that have cast a negative light on the county in recent times, our report today is about good things that have occurred over the past several years because of the plan, and more good things that will be coming over the next 17 years. The most noteworthy event for the Better Place Plan in fiscal 2015 was the April passage of the renewal of the plan for 15 years, extending from the beginning of 2018 through the end of 2032. In the months leading up to that referendum, it became clear that much of the public was unaware of the good things that had come from the Better Place Plan since it began in 2003. Consequently, there was a series of informational meetings put together to explain the plan and the benefits that we all derived from the infrastructure improvements that occurred. And many of your members of your board and your staff gave up many of their evenings to attend these meetings, to explain the plan to the public, and to discuss the benefits that flowed from the plan. They were joined by elected officials from the municipalities and their staffs. In addition, the Palatka Daily News was a strong supporter of the plan, as you know, and I think that made a big difference, perhaps a decisive difference in the outcome of the referendum. As we transition from the current 15-year plan to the new 15-year renewal, one significant change will be the amount of funds available for infrastructure investment. The plan currently spends about $1.6 million per year on debt service. That obligation is satisfied at the end of the current 15-year plan, which is the end of 2017. So beginning in 2018, we no longer have that 1.6 million annual expense. In addition, at about the same time, the $500,000 per year that currently is allocated to the regional water system may come to an end. If those two events do occur, we will free up over $2 million per year for other infrastructure investments. In addition, the planned surtax revenue has been increasing as the economy continues to improve, and I expect that trend to continue. This past year, our surtax revenue was over $5 million for the year for the first time in the 8 years since the recession began. If we compare what the plan did over the last 6 years to what it will be able to do in the first 6 years of the renewal, beginning in 2018, we will see a substantial increase in the capacity of the plan. During the past 6 years, after removing the 2.1 million annual fixed costs, the water system and the debt service that we have now, there was a total left to allocate to other infrastructure projects of $7.5 million for the 6-year period in the past 6 years. Assuming that the 2015 surtax revenue of over $5 million remains constant and does not increase during the first 6 years of the new plan, although I think we can expect that there will be increases in that amount as the economy continues to improve. But assuming it's constant, that will provide the county with $30.8 million of revenue to invest in infrastructure projects during the 6-year period. So for that 6-year period, for the beginning of the renewal period, compared to the $7.5 million over the last 6 years we had. Talking about going from $7.5 million for infrastructure for the 6-year period, and looking at the new 6-year period beginning with the renewal of $30.8 million. A big difference in the amount of money that will be available for infrastructure investment. In addition, there currently is a balance in the plan's account of about $9.5 million, and it's possible, probably likely, that some of that money will remain to also be spent within the first 6 years of the renewal of the plan. If the water system allocation doesn't end, if it's determined that additional investment in the water system needs to continue beyond the end of the current 15-year period, the most that is likely to be required would be the same amount that we're now paying, the $500,000 a year. So if we did that for the first 6 years of the plan, that's $3 million investment in the water system plant or operation. That means that instead of $30.8 million, we would drop down to $27.8 million available for infrastructure investment in the first 6 years of the new plan. The most likely outcome with the water system is that the additional investment required from the plan would be less than 6 years. Maybe it'll only be 3 or 4 years. And it may not be the full $500,000. It may be $400,000 or $200,000 that's needed. So what is going to be available for investment in the new 6-year period will probably be somewhere between $28 and $30 million, depending on what happens with the investment in the water system. But this means that we're looking at some major new investments in the county's infrastructure. And it's important to note that infrastructure is a major driver of economic development, and that any infrastructure that makes residents and businesses become or feel better about their community is a driver of economic development. Anything that improves people's attitudes about the county and its future, it drives economic development. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But that includes paving of roads, of dirt roads, and building recreational facilities. But economic development impacts do vary among the investment possibilities. And I think we would be well advised to consider the Better Place Plan, an economic development plan. That is a plan to foster growth and create jobs. And if we do that, I think it's appropriate to begin the process of creating a 15-year plan for the 15-year renewal period that begins in 2018, all within the limits provided in the ordinance, of course. But that may mean bringing together experts in economic development, such as the Chamber of Commerce, economic development specialists, and perhaps economic development practitioners and academics from our retirement community. One of the comparative advantages of Putnam County is the large retirement community we have and the expertise that is available there to be tapped for things such as their experience in economic development. Recently, there have been a number of sources, including the Palaca Daily News, that have suggested that communities whose citizens have positive thoughts about their community, that those communities are more likely to receive economic development, to experience that, than are communities whose citizens hold negative views. And maybe greater awareness of the Better Place Plan and its benefits can offset negatives, such as a poor health rating or employment concerns. Bud Surratt will go over some of our thoughts on how to address those issues in a few minutes. But first I want to go through the written report, which is on pages 68 and 69 of your agenda packet. And as I go through this, please feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions as I go through it. Looking at the report, the first two paragraphs, the one about the Better Place Plan and the second one about the Oversight Committee, those are intended to remind all of us what the purpose of the plan and the Oversight Committee are, what their task with doing. And in brief, the Better Place Plan is designed to improve our infrastructure. That's its basic function. The Oversight Committee is to provide assistance as required and to ensure that the ordinance requirements are met. The tables below, I want you to remember that, remind you that all of these numbers in this table represent 83% of the dollars that go into the Better Place Plan. 17% of the dollars go to the municipalities, and they control how those dollars are spent, where they go. So we don't have numbers that show us the total impact of the plan, the total number of projects. They aren't listed either. We have to go to the municipalities to get that. And I think I mentioned last year that I wanted to put together a document that would give you the total impact, give the public the total impact of the Better Place Plan and a better picture of all the projects that have been done. I haven't gotten to that point yet, unfortunately, but I have talked to municipalities. Some are certainly agreeable to providing us with the information to do that, and I'm pretty certain that by this time next year, we'll have a report that will cover the entire county, including the municipalities. Looking first at Table 1, that table is a report on the activities of the plan for the fiscal year 2015. I mentioned that we had revenue of over $5 million for the first time in quite a while. In addition to the $5 million surtax, we had some interest, and then we had a carryover from the previous year of almost $8 million, giving us $13 million revenue. Under project expenditures is listed the projects that were undertaken in 2015. Some dirt to pavement projects, some road surfacing, some at the fairgrounds, and some land acquisition for the park in Georgetown, and then the regional water system, $500,000 that goes to them each year until the end of this current plan. Given $2 million for total project expenditure, then a debt service of about 1.6, giving a total expenditure of a little over $3.5 million compared to our total revenue of $13 million, so we have a carryover of about $9.5 million. I mentioned last year that I was concerned when the carryover was getting up around $8 million, that my belief is we're better off, and the public would like us to be more concerned about projects on the ground as opposed to dollars in the bank. In other words, I have encouraged the spending down of the surplus that we have. Since I said that, the surplus has increased another $1.5 million. I'm not sure if my thinking is just different from everybody else's, but I think we need to address that issue. That may be for you to address, it may be for Public Works, I'm not sure who is involved. When I last talked with Don Jacobowitz about it, in fact, I think we talked in our last meeting, and he was clear that I had been concerned it had to do with personnel issues, that he was short of staff for a while. And he assured us that that was not the case, that he was fully capable of taking on more work and had no problem doing that if he was so directed. But other than that, I would just leave that there with my recommendation that that number be spent down some. Yes.
What is your comfort zone? What level would you feel is appropriate?
When I talked with Mike Anderson about this a while back, he also said there was no reason to have a surplus particularly. And the only reason that he and I were aware of might be some timing issues as far as when a loan payment comes due and when the revenue comes in, that they might miss each other and not get it in the bank before the check gets there.
Not good.
So some minimum amount. Now, I said last year certainly $1 million was plenty. I think you could get down lower than that, but I would think there'd be no reason to be above $1 million. And John Jones might have a different opinion on that to share with us. I don't know.
Well, we would not see it as unspent revenue. We would see it as a reserve to handle any unforeseen drop in revenue for the next year. Obviously, there's a percentage there that we are comfortable with, and this number exceeds that.
Can I ask the same question to you then, Mr. Smith? What's your comfort zone? A million or?
Well, I wouldn't want to throw a number out here without really talking with John about it a little bit more, because we have had discussions about, you know, what is that reasonable reserve. It just, as it is with all county expenditures that we're obligated to pay, is to make sure that we're able to cover some minor blip that may come along that we're not anticipating. But I will get you a number.
Yeah. Commissioner Harvey?
If you just look at the numbers real quick, it looks like 1.6 million for 2 years would be our debt obligation for that, and 500,000 for 2 years. So looking at it, $3.2 million takes us out of debt completely on this current term, correct? So we could take that out of there right now and still have right about $6 million left to do other projects with. Am I correct in saying that?
Well, it comes out of one pocket or the other. It'll balance out.
But 2 more years at 1.6, 2 more years at 500,000, that's our debt obligation.
Yes, and we should have income coming in
Right.
each year of around 5 million or so.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we sat on the money way too long, and we need to get this money out producing income to our citizens of Putnam County. I agree with that.
Commissioner Flagg?
Mr. Chairman, I think there are some other factors that we need to be mindful of. Many times, Better Place Plan funds are leveraged with grants. We don't know when a grant will be awarded, and if we don't have the match, then we don't get the project unless we're paying 100%. And I think that although we know that there are some services that we need to be able to provide, when we piggyback on state grants or federal grants and have the money to do so, then that's when we are awarded, because many of these grants have that requirement. So I think that the other thing is law of supply and demand. When we're able to put multiple projects together with contractors, then Public Works is also negotiating better rates, lower rates that causes the dollar to go further. So oftentimes, again, when you're looking at it from a piecemeal perspective, you're spending X amount of dollars and you're spending more for less. But when you have what I call a comprehensive approach to it, and you have multiple projects, or you have these various grants that are coming in. Now, I grant you, there are some time over the years that things appear to be somewhat out of balance. I agree with you and the committee as it relates to this next era that we are moving in. Let's have a comprehensive plan. Let's make sure the goals are sharp so that we can have the proper measuring indicators that we need to be able to grade these, so to speak, have an annual report card versus us saying, okay, let's be grateful for what we accomplished. Let's have a way to measure how much achievement we have, and if we missed any marks, whether there's any abilities to overcome it, in the successive years. But I think we have to be mindful when we think, quote, we have X amount of dollars in the bank. I know that there's a percentage, and the clerk has already indicated that he will to make sure that he give us a number. But I think if we drill down on it and make it scientific today, that we're going to probably shoot ourselves in the foot.
We're not going to do that. Mr. West, continue, please. Mr. Jones, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Commissioner Flagg raises an interesting question that regarding matching funds for grants. And I think we discussed that a little bit last year, and my hope was this year we would be able to give you something showing what the leveraging was, what we were able to bring in with what kind of matching grants, and we haven't reached that point yet. I hope sometime soon work with Public Works and come up with something that'll give you an idea of the additional impact Better Place Plan funds have. When you have multiplier effects, it's certainly a much bigger impact than just spending out of the fund. If you can attract FDOT dollars or wherever. And so I hope soon to be able to give you a better picture of what that what that impact is, what those
would-
funds are.
If I may, the expenditure sheet is really helpful, but if we had the same thing for what Commissioner Flagg and you were just explaining, that would really be nice.
Right.
You can see what the matches were and how much we yielded in the total grant and that sort of thing, don't you think?
Yes, sir.
We'll be striving to get there.
Yeah.
And I think, Mr. Chairman, if I may interject, Public Works, you know, we know that there's some shifting that's going on in Public Works. But at the end of the day, when they prioritize projects, they're the ones, their engineering department, their roads and bridges and all of those departments prioritizing these projects. And they are the ones who, to me, causes a project to score more points based upon their assessment and their analysis, not the commissioners, you know, not the oversight committee. That department bring those to us with proper rankings, and then without regard to what district they're in or what zone they're in, all of those things. When these prioritized projects come, they're able to have those funding. Then to me, the presentation of it saying we're going to stretch these dollars because we got the grant dollars and sometimes it's multiple grants and to go along with Better Place dollars. And so again, if you've got 3 different funding sources there, that means we're stretching the home dollars. You know, we're making the pennies home that are being put in, contributed from home, go much further. And I'm certainly a proponent of that.
Yes, that's good.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Harris.
I do like, Mr. Jones, your idea of having a new 15-year plan. Right now, we set aside a certain amount for roads each year, and we know that much, that's what you're referring to, is Public Works coming forward with the needs. But, so we do a certain amount for that, but I think we do need the plan. It's a good idea, and we need to think about that. And set another % for certain things that are needed in the community, and thank you for that.
Thank you. Going on to Table 2, it shows the history of our surtax revenue income. And you can kind of plot it against the economy, the recession, and kind of see we were right in that recession with everybody else as far as
Hit
our
5 million
income.
before the recession and at the end of it, didn't we?
Right. So we're looking good in 2015, up above 5 million for the first time in a long while in revenue, and the economy is not certain to be improving over the next 5 or 10 years. There are people who say it may go back into recession, but so far it seems to be rather have rather long legs and will, I think, be continuing slight improvements over the next several years. So I expect that the $5 million will be going up, but that's certainly not a certain thing. Table 3 shows 2 of our major spending categories and the history of them: the resurfacing expenditures and the dirt to pavement expenditures. And to some extent, they reflect some of the drops in revenue and the recession. The roads, dirt roads that have been paved from the beginning has now reached about 81 miles total. And in looking at the totals on those 2 numbers, you see that paving is about 30 million of the total. Resurfacing over 8 million. The balance of infrastructure spending is about 11.2. In other words, from the beginning in 2003, we have spent, or the plan has spent, 11.2 million on things other than resurfacing and paving.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Jones, may I ask a question? On page 69, 2009, $21 million was spent for dirt road improvements. Shouldn't that number have come over to Table 3 on 2009? to show accurate number here?
On table 3, you said?
Yes, sir. Table 3 on page 68. And if you
No,
look at,
no, and I'll tell you why. And at some point in the listing of projects, that process, this sheet got a lot longer. And so there was some aggregation that Mike Anderson did just to put a lot of stuff in on one line item instead of 20 different line items. And he did that in 2009 and just took what had been kind of above that to a large extent, put it in that one line item. That's when and it raises a good point that I should make everyone aware of, that the fiscal year completed here, this was a request or an idea that Commissioner Flagg had a couple of years ago, asking that we put in some chronology for these, when these projects were completed. And that struck me as a good idea, so I continued it this year. And the completion date of a project, as far as accounting is concerned, is when they put the money out or when it goes into the ledger or whatever. There's some trigger point that makes it a 2015 expenditure versus a 2014. As far as Public Works is concerned, the work may be not terribly connected to that particular number. Most of the work may have been done in 2014, but the final dollars show up in 2015. So there is, the chronology here is a guide, but it's not an absolute by any means. And certainly the 21 million is a flagrant case of of overstating what was done in 2009 in 1 year. The work for that 21 million was done in numerous years before that, and accounting has put that 21 million there, and so I've tried to keep these numbers in accord with the accounting records. The numbers now on table 3 are more in accord with the disaggregated amounts. And accounting does have a sheet that shows all the expenditures per year spread out. And that 21 million, you can disaggregate it and spread it out over the years, and that's what's done in in table 3. That 21 million is there, it's just spread out over some of the years. So the 21 million is definitely part of the 30 million on table 3.
gotcha.
Continuing on table 4, that is the current list of all projects that have been completed or undertaken since 2003. It shows down near the bottom that there are some recurring costs. One is the $500,000 per year for the regional water system, and then the debt service costs, the principal repayment and the interest repayment. And that concludes what I think I wanted to say about this report. If they have questions on this report, be glad to address them at this point.
Commissioners, any other questions, comments? Mr. Jones' report. We have somebody from the audience.
Yeah, just want to certainly thank the committee for
Yeah.
sitting in on those meetings and seeing how, again, the committee is operating within the purview of overviewing. And the biggest issue that I see is when you drill down on the project, does the project meet the criteria that has been set forth? And once that has been answered, then to me, you know, the committee certainly has given due diligence for the benefit of the community and the commission, because, you know, we need the feedback, but all of the hoops that we jump through to make sure that these things happen is very important. And I think that there was some concern at one point as to whether the commission was trying to change the scope of the committee, and I think everybody now understands that that was not ever the case. We just wanted to be able to say, don't get bogged down into those other areas. Make sure that everything is in compliance. Let's make sure that our staffing is prioritizing these projects and that we're getting them through the pipeline, so to speak, so that the community is not only beneficiary of these projects, but they're also aware. And I think that's what came out even during the season of putting this back before the citizens, is that all of these great things were happening, but nobody was pretty much telling the story. And so we found that out. And so it goes right back to us preparing for the next 15 years, is to have that vision cast, put the energy in building the scenario and the portrait that we want the community to benefit from, and then marking it each year as we go.
Thank you, Mr. Flagg.
If I may, I'd like to turn it over to Bud Surratt.
Yes, yes,
And
please.
then address the questions.
Okay,
after
we have some questions, and if you just stay at the podium, Commissioner Pellissier is going to bring a mic to the podium for the questions. Mr. Surratt, good morning, sir.
Morning. Bud Surratt, 121 Lakeshore Drive, West Putnam, Vice Chairman of the Better Place Plan Committee, regardless of where I wanted it or not. But I do want to say it's been a pleasure serving on that. It's an eye-opener, and it's certainly one of the biggest benefits to Putnam County that I've ever seen. You know.
Pull the mic closer to you.
Okay.
The city can't.
You got it.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just to reiterate what Ron had said, you know, the Better Place Plan's revenues and expenditures were audited by the county's external audit during the county's annual audit. And the review and in the opinion of the Better Place Plan Committee, the 2015 surtax funds have been spent appropriately. You know, so that's a good thing. There's been a lot of undercurrent talking about not being spent appropriately. We may not agree with where some of those dollars went, but it is in accordance with the ordinance. But Ron had asked me to talk a little bit about more of a positive image and marketing the positive things of the Better Place Plan to the folks in Putnam County rather than the negative things. You know, we always hear about the negative things, but we hear very little about all the positive things, you know. And so we've talked several times in the...
You're easing back
Okay.
away.
Yeah, we talked several times in the committee meetings about how to get the word out to the folks in Putnam County. And I know it's a prevalent thing out in West Putnam. I'm sure it is and down south in Crescent City area, although they do have the Courier-Journal down there that's very good at reporting stuff. In other parts of the county, a lot of folks do not receive any kind of medium that tells them what's going on. And we need, we've talked about, and perhaps the commission can establish some large billboard at each one of the major entries into the Putnam County, stating this is a Better Place Plan community or county, and these are to list some of the major projects. You know, there's thousands and thousands of eyes see those 2 or 3 times a day. And and visitors to Putnam County, we see those things, and what's happening. And certainly then all the folks that are not getting the emails and not getting the paper and so forth as they drive down the road, they would be able to see. And regardless of what you think, the peripheral vision of most people, they pick up on a nice sign that says what we're doing in a positive manner. Secondly, we need to market Putnam County in a positive manner and maybe use some of the Better Place plans to do a short video version of the great things that are available in Putnam County that could be run on the TV stations periodically, you know. Putnam County is a great place to visit. It's also a great place to live. in spite of the dirt roads, you know. And dirt roads aren't all that bad either, don't get me wrong there, but maybe in conjunction with the Chamber of Commerce and somebody actively pursuing, or a committee actively pursuing, as Ron has said, you know, coming up with a plan that will encompass the next 10, 15 years of the Better Place Plan, what we want to do. What are we going to do with the Shell building to market that? You know, try to get people up north and snow that high to come down and start a business here. We have to have some economic opportunities. You know, out where we were at, we were all aglow with the fact that Walmart came in. It lasted 9 months. And, you know, those things happen, but we need to get some jobs. People were really excited about an opportunity to go to work. And I still believe that there's a lot of people in Putnam County that'll work if they have the opportunity, you know. So maybe a committee appointed by the commissioners to explore methods and ways of getting a positive influence out to different parts of the United States, and certainly our neighboring counties, that it is a good place.
Yeah. Commissioner Flagg, if I could stop you for a minute, just reminded me that tomorrow we are kicking off a stakeholders meeting throughout the county, including the education system and just about anybody with any kind of stakeholding in it. We're going to start a conversation in the community about economic development, right on the lines you were just advocating for. So it's on the way.
Video and all.
Yep.
Great. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, at this time we have some questions. If you'd come up, Mr. Havens, and thank you, Commissioner Pelletier, for taking that mic up there. And, you can stay right at the podium, Mr. Jones. Yeah.
Ron, I got a first question. You said that the debt service is going to drop out in 2 years, or drops out this year?
In the microphone, Mr. Jones, if you could. That's what I was, there you go.
Yes, Rick, that's correct.
Okay, you talked about leveraging loans right after the vote in April. We leverage a loan for, I think, $1.4, $1.5 million. Is that going to be paid off?
I'm not familiar with loans other than the $13.5 million that shows up in our financial statements.
Well, April 11th, we leveraged a loan right after the vote for 1.4, 1.5 million, so there's still going to be a debt service on that.
I'm not familiar with that, perhaps.
Okay, all right, next question.
Stacy Pompel could probably.
All right, next question. There are 2 bonds leveraged against this. One doesn't pay off to 2040, one not to 2054. So is there still going to be service? Those bonds are going to be paid, have to be paid off, and they can't be paid off before them.
There are no dollars coming out of the Better Place plan for paying those that I'm aware of, and if there is, then Stacy Pompel could perhaps address that issue.
Okay. I'm waiting for an answer. There are 2 bonds.
Yeah.
She's getting ready to answer if you can
Yeah.
give her time.
Okay.
Let's give it a minute. Take a break over there. Ms. Propel.
Better Place Plan is giving to the East Putnam Water Wastewater Fund is helping that fund pay some debt. It's that fund's debt, and that fund will pay its own debt as it can. So that's why that assistance may go on for a while. It's just assistance.
Rick, that goes to my discussion about whether the $500,000 that we're paying, or that the fund is allocated per year to the water system, whether that will in fact stop at the end of this 15-year period, or if it'll go into the next 15-year period. And as I said, that fund, it may go in at the full amount, the $500,000 per year, which over the 6-year period would mean an additional $3 million invested in infrastructure that comes out of the available funds, but that in fact it might only go for 2 or 3 years, or it might be $400,000 instead of $500,000, or maybe only $200,000. It'll depend on what the the need for that debt service is, but it won't be any more than the 500,000 we now show as going to the end of 2017, and we have indicated may go into 2018 and beyond.
Mr. Chairman, if I can interrupt for 1 second.
You can.
I think some of the questions that are being asked is outside of the scope of the Oversight Committee, and Mr. Haven can certainly prepare those questions, and our administration really should be answering these questions that are being asked. And I think that it's not equitable to put our Oversight Committee, because they are reviewing what's being sent to them. They're not projecting what we're going to do or what we're going to need to do as a commission, and so the commission during our budget meetings will be dealing with administration to project us forward, and certainly those meetings are open, Mr. Haven.
Okay, but the comment was in the presentation that the debt service, the $1.6 million would drop out after this year. Okay, we'll get away from that. My next question, expenditures are supposed to last for 5 years. That's, if we're making an expenditure, it's supposed to be something that's gonna be there for 5 years?
Lasts for 5 years or more.
Yeah. The city of Palaca has used their share of the debt service plan to keep the golf course afloat, $463,000 over the last 3 years.
We have no jurisdiction whatsoever, none.
Well, doesn't what the Better Place plan set up, doesn't those specifications transfer to whatever municipality gets those shares?
They're 17%, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
They are.
Each
Well,
of
part of the
those,
17%.
each of those that consist of the 17%, those municipalities, they have their ordinance and their governing regulations, and so each of those entities, what they have in their rules should be what you measure what they do with, just like you're doing us, and it's a good thing. We want the check and balance, we want the transparency.
Okay, but the city has now got the golf
Let's-
course up for
Mr.
sale,
Haven.
so where'd the
Mr.
5 years
Haven,
go?
let's
Do
keep
need to
it to
speak with the
Putnam
mayor
County.
and the commissioners
Yeah.
that
All
run,
right.
that run the
Two
city.
different
Last
things.
question.
Thank you.
Rick, before you get to that, let me make it very clear, just in case there's any lingering confusion, that the debt service shown on our statements there of around 1.6 million per year, that has to do only with the $13.5 million loan that the Better Place Fund took out. That fund, that loan is totally paid off by the end of 2016. That $1.6 million debt service will go to zero on end of 2017. It has no connection to anything the water system's doing or anybody else is doing.
Okay, last question. We got in our land acquisition in Georgetown. How is that considered infrastructure?
Land acquisition is specifically listed in the ordinance as a permissible capital expenditure. It has a life considered to be more than 5 years and can be considered as a capital investment.
To do what with? Don't we have enough public lands in
That's your
Putnam County already?
opinion, please, Mr. Haven, and to keep the question straight up. Yep, it's an amenity. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Jones.
No problem.
Any other questions for Mr. Jones from the public?
I'd like for us to take a 5-minute recess. Mr.
Yes, I think that's good. Oh, well, let's thank you, both of you. A round of applause. Very good job. Thank you very much, Mr. Surratt, Mr. Jones, and we will take a 5-minute, yes.
I had a couple questions for you before you leave. Is there anything, Mr. Surratt, thank you for your service on this board, and I appreciate your comments that the monies was spent according to the ordinance. Is there anything that we can do as a Board of County Commissioners to help with the ordinance or do anything to make your job easier? I know we talked about things that are coming up tomorrow, but is there any one final piece of gold nugget that you could say, if you could do this, it would really help us do that?
I think taking a look at the future 15-year plan in a little different light, perhaps, than we have in the last 15 years, and giving a little more thought to the economic development aspect of it would be a big step, a big help for us.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, let's take that break. We'll be reconvene at 10:30. Close to. Just a moment. Yeah. We want you on the record this morning. Tell us about this new piece of equipment you were getting a grant for.
Chip, are you reconvening the meeting?
Oh, no, I didn't really, but I will. Let's reconvene and we'll wait on Commissioner Harris. All right, sorry, Tony. Quinn, yeah, inform us on this.
The grant that we put forward a little bit earlier in the consent agenda is for some new advanced technology. It's called video laryngoscopes, and we've been intubating patients since I have been here and before, so well over 20-something years we've been using the manual way to do that. This provides the latest, greatest technology to be able to do that same life-saving intervention.
Okay, and cuts our liability risk greatly?
Absolutely. This is something the state-of-the-art. The hospitals are using them. We're now going to be using those. And just intubating a patient is somebody who's not breathing or has a compromised airway. So taking control of the airway with that advanced measure is potentially the life-saving measure that they need.
Okay.
So this would give us some.
Let's fill, any questions?
Chief, that's exactly what I told them, but they wanted an expert.
And
Commissioner Flagg's been on this before.
it's a better system. Well, we have a doctor.
Yeah. Yeah, they have the medical director that they operate under there. Give them the understanding, because a doctor is not going to be on every rescue unit out in the field to intubate a patient. And if they don't intubate the patient, then they're going to be calling one of the local funeral homes.
That's right.
So.
Correct. Yeah.
No.
Commissioner Harris, we just decided, we had our expert here on that earlier conversation, so we didn't.
Well, and to Commissioner Flagg's point, we have a medical director who writes protocols. And all of our paramedics are trained to implement and utilize those protocols, from simply starting an IV to pushing medications for treating patients for whatever the condition may be. Intubation is one of those doctor-authorized and trained protocols that we utilize. And like I said, we've been doing it for over 30 years. This just gives us the enhanced ability to ensure.
More of a technological advancement, more so than a practice. So it's not a new practice that's happening among our EMS trained paramedics. This is just, again, giving them a tool to enhance the quality of emergency services, emergency medical services that are being provided to our citizens.
And let me make one other point too, if I might. I would put up any of our paramedics against any other paramedics in the state of Florida, anywhere else, because our patients, we have long transport times. So having these tools to be able to potentially save their lives while we've got them for the 30, 45 hour period of time, we need every advantage we can to make sure that we're giving our patients the best opportunities. So.
And all of our paramedics by state law are being engaged in continuing education and training. I mean, you know, you guys Absolutely. Are really the training department of this county when it relates to state requirements, and then just local, you know, just your professionalism and the connection with the hospital, the trauma centers, and things of that nature that, you know, you're really on the edge, cutting edge.
Absolutely. Not only do we have to meet state requirements, we have to meet our medical director's requirements. We're over and above the state requirements.
Okay, Quinn, thank you so much for explaining that to us. All right, we're going to move to item 7 on the agenda. Mr. Nimitz, welcome, sir.
Morning, Commissioners. Mike Nimitz, Interim Director of Public Works. I'm requesting the board to approve an agreement for consulting services with Taylor Engineering for design services for Fort Gates Ferry Terminal improvements, summing to $204,082, and design services for Drayton Island Ferry Terminal improvements for $89,077.50. The design services for Fort Gates is essentially to design the east landing, East Ferry Landing. This will include permitting and construction administration activities. The design services for Drayton Island will include load testing, and from that load testing will generate a design for temp repairs, and that will include the permitting and provide construction administrative oversight.
Now, Mr. Nimitz, on that road, that testing, I found it interesting that we are not building to FDOT standards, but to the Florida building codes, according to this. Is that correct? I mean, I highlighted it right here and.
As far as the temporary repairs
Yes.
on Drayton Island,
Yeah, no, it's.
Well, it says that although reviewed by FDOT, it's not under their jurisdiction, so it's designed under the Florida Building
Code, yeah.
As a general pile-supported structure supporting vehicular load. So I guess the jurisdiction is what caused that?
yes. Yes, we are, we have coordinated this with FDOT, and they did not take exception to it.
Yeah, and it does say and may be designed.
Yes.
Either or, so.
As far as the Drayton Island, again, we will be doing the load testing. There may not be any modifications required. The load testing is to find out if it is in fact required, and to what extent we need to do the temporary repairs. And these temporary repairs are only to stay in place until FDOT takes over the landings at Drayton Island. FDOT will be completely rebuilding both landings. Starting in 2017, they'll begin their preliminary design phase. 2019, they will start with right-of-way acquisition, and then 2021, they will completely tear them down and start them up from start to finish. These are just temporary repairs to enable, traffic to make it across and to.
Commissioner Pellicer?
Mr. Nimitz, in the past, they've had issues with getting heavy equipment over onto the island to do work,
Yes,
either for the county or private residents want to pour concrete, per se. Are these landings going to be built eventually when this is done with that in mind, that we are prepared for that, so we don't, I know they have one issue with the barge that gets them over there, but if we ever upgrade that barge, I don't want the landings to be insufficient to hinder that.
Yes, the temporary will, I believe it's a 10 kip load capacity is what we were aiming for with the temporary repairs. And when FDOT gets in there, their design requirements are more stringent. There's a whole set of criteria in the feasibility study that, that requires, concrete trucks and all types of traffic that's detailed in that. It's pretty extensive.
Okay. Any other questions, Commissioner?
I do, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Nimitz, there's no way to get this all done at one time before, to meet FDOT standards now? Because it looks like we're gonna put a Band-Aid on a situation, and then we're gonna come back and tear it all apart and do it again.
That's correct. We're putting a temporary fix on Drayton Island until the FDOT can come in. Our funding, when we initially took this on, was insufficient. We could not rebuild both ferries with what we had, ferry landings.
All right, fair enough.
FDOT has $4 million in comparison to our $1 million.
I got
So
you.
our $1 million is gonna buy some temporary repairs to last until 2021, and then they're gonna come in with the $4 million and give you guys the Cadillac.
If you could refresh us, though, on what happened, or where the grant money is that we received from the feds. Is that like turned over to FDOT now to
Well,
manage?
the grant money was issued by the Federal Highway Administration and is being administered by the FDOT. We have spent funds in the design phase. I have to pull in numbers here. By the time we approve this right here, we will have spent $415,000 for Fort Gates in design costs. That's with the approval of this modification here. And that will leave us approximately $604,000 left for construction. Okay. Our estimate at the Fort Gates Ferry to construct the east side landing was $437,000. So there may be a little bit of contingency left over, But again, that's an estimate. So when it goes out to bid, I do like having that contingency in case it goes up to 500 and something thousand. So that's the financial status of that particular project there. And again, we reduced the scope to one ferry landing because that's the only one that's structurally deficient at that location. As far as Drayton Island is concerned, after these design costs were approved, we will have spent a total of $277,000 in design costs. And there'll be a significant amount of money left over for construction work and temporary repairs, $722,000 roughly. And we're going to explore other expenditures that are covered under the APQ1 agreement with FDOT to spend some of that additional money that may be left over.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Nimitz, so we got $1 million for Fort Gates Ferry and $1 million for Drayton Island, correct?
Yes, sir. Roughly, that's what the figures are. $1,020,000 for Fort Gates and $1 million for Drayton Island.
Okay, all right.
All right, Robert Bond, you wanted to speak to this subject? If you would come forward, please.
Robert Bly, 116 Sand Lake Drive, Pomona Park, Florida. Couple questions. The history which you just
Robert,
went
getting
over-
that mic good if you're gonna.
Sorry. The history that you just went over shows that we've spent about half of the money, close to half of the money in engineering. The engineering that we're having done now, is that the same engineering that we've done in the past, or is this other engineering that need to be?
The engineering we spent to date was the feasibility study, which was extensive, and it took quite a while to get done. The feasibility study was completed in the first quarter of 2015, near the end of that. At that point, we identified, deficiencies in our budget, okay, with our projected construction costs. And we went to FDOT, trying to find additional funds and everything, and explored a number of ideas. And at that time, they had found the $4 million for Drayton Island, so that was very promising, but it was going to be until 2021. We were hoping to be able to commingle those funds, take those funds from the Drayton Island and do both ferries at Fort Gates, but the way it worked with the federal agency, that was not permittable. So we had to come back to the drawing table and generate this final scope here that we have now.
Yeah, that's what we're
Finish
doing.
this up. And that was decided, I guess, in the fourth quarter of 2015. So this has been a hot item. We've been pushing it every which direction we can to get it to where it needs to be.
Appreciate
It's
your
been a problem
diligence.
with money.
Yes.
Okay, Robert, does that answer your question?
That's one. I have a couple more.
Get the mic close to you.
Was an RFP required or done for the spending or for the engineering work that was done?
Yes, that's correct. There was an RFQ process that was conducted, and that's how Taylor Engineering was selected. There were several firms. We have all the documentation with the grading and how it all went. If you'd like to review it, it's at the Public Works building.
Good answer.
And it's also, if you were to review on the actual county website, you can see the RFQ. It probably has the results of it there on the county website, too.
You mentioned that you had narrowed this down to one project now. Is that what you said? That you were going to do one project and the other project was being put off? Or did I
One
misunderstand?
landing.
One landing.
At Fort Gates, yes. Fort Gates Landing, we're just going to do one ferry landing. That's all we have the funding available to do at this time. And that's the only one that is structurally deficient, is the one on the east side.
Okay. So we are doing work on both the Fort Gates Ferry and the Drayton Island Ferry?
That's correct.
Okay, I just misunderstood you there. Okay, I think that does it. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we authorize design services for Fort Gates Ferry terminal improvements in the amount of $204,082.
okay, motion. on the floor.
Second.
A second, and you had discussion?
Nope, no, I'm fine.
Anybody? Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nimitz.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Item B, design services for the Drayton Island Ferry terminal improvement. So move that we authorize an amount of $89,077.50.
Motion on the floor?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Carries.
And hooray.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioners. All right, next on the agenda, Mr. Crowley, you and Mrs. Anderson have been very patient this morning. It's your turn.
Really?
I think this is the one that works.
Oh.
Yeah, the other one's a light.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Rosemary Anderson, 145 Mount Royal Avenue, Weelaka. Steve Crowley.
I'm Steve Crowley. I live at 520 Kirby Street, Palatka, and I'm the Director of Libraries for Putnam County.
It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning to report on the results of the Putnam County Library System membership in the Powell Library Co-op in the fiscal year 15. Steve is handing out a brochure that summarizes my remarks and more particularly how Putnam residents have benefited from our Powell membership. But I'd like to call your attention to a few highlights. You may recall that Powell was organized in 2010 to help increase the resources of the Putnam and Levy County libraries and to compensate and relieve the Alachua library system of some of the demands of our residents going to use their facilities. It's been, I would say, a happy and productive partnership between the three parties, and I hope you'll agree.
We do.
To $500,000.
You-
508 to be
you-
exact.
You skipped ahead. I was going to point that out later.
We're
Keep
very
it
happy.
key. Anyway, Powell's long-term plan specifically states that we will augment the resources for member systems, and we will provide electronic tools for the success of the systems and of our patrons. And one of the things of which I am most proud is, if you look on the inside left panel, is the addition of the online resources that were skimmed to none when we started out and are really, our citizens are able to take advantage of the most prominent and useful online resources. One of the other accomplishments is that our residents have access to the resources of almost every library in the state because the Powell Co-op pays for the system to borrow materials and transport them from Palm Beach, which is the case of one of the books that I borrowed, and that service is available for free to all of our citizens. We've enhanced our programs for Teen Tech Week and the summer library system. You have a picture of Super Getty the Gecko, and adding professional educator entertainers to our programs really attracts an audience and helps the children in regular attendance and also enjoy the learning experience. And we know that if our children can't read, they're not going anywhere in life.
Correct.
So these programs are very, very important. And of course, they're during the summer when there are opportunities to get in trouble. So if we can keep them productive and entertained and involved, well, then we're all money ahead. We have expanded our collection of materials, and our library staff has enjoyed the training opportunities and the interchanges with other systems so they can feel more confident in how they're doing their job and enjoy it. So in fiscal year 15, Powell provided $109,000 in to Putnam County to add these benefits. And that is a typical expenditure. As Chip jumped ahead and said, over the 5 years, it comes to over $500,000.
Impressive money.
Right.
And our library system will be benefiting this year, fiscal 16, to about the same amount of money, $109,000 for this fiscal year. And we have a reserve of $350,000 so that we can look forward to at least having it continue into the next year or so beyond. So we're happy to report these accomplishments, and we like to be able to come with good news and say we brought money and service. And we can answer any questions if you have some.
When you started this program, I know we were nervous about the big county, Alachua, sucking up the lion's share of the proceeds, but that just hasn't been the case, has it?
Not really.
Yeah.
There were some
very fair and equitable.
We're bigger, better in the first trustee meetings, board meetings, but it's a very harmonious, compatible arrangement, and so we're all equal partners by now.
Well, I really salute y'all for venturing into it. It's worked out, yes.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner.
I wanted to thank Rosemary Anderson. She began at the beginning in 2010 and has
Yes, I feel like a relic.
made it part of your life, and thank you so much. It's been a wonderful program.
Yes,
Thank
it
you.
has.
I've enjoyed the experience, and I know our other board members have too.
I didn't mean to leave Steve out.
That's all right.
We appreciate your services too, but
Commissioner Harvey.
Larry, did you have a
Thank you
question?
again for making the presentation today. Did I understand you correctly to say that you can borrow books from other libraries and you borrow one from West Palm? Is that correct?
Yes, you can.
My wife has told me the other day, as Steve knows, she's probably your best customer in the world. And she says she has read everything in Putnam County so far, and she actually rented some books the other day. She said, I already read these again. So I will let her know that she can go to other libraries and find.
There are two ways to do that, Commissioner.
Okay.
One, of course, would be within any of the counties that we have a reciprocal borrowing agreement, which is most of the counties that surround Putnam. She can go to Clay County, St. Johns County, Marion County, Volusia County, and obviously Alachua and Levy County. But if she doesn't want to make those trips to get those books, we can interlibrary loan those materials from, as Rosemary said, almost any library in the state of Florida. And that is free because of our participation in PAL. They pay our, this is going to sound funny, and it's not a Dairy Queen plug, it's a dilly delivery. So we we dilly books all over the state of Florida.
Good, thank you.
Also, just for the record, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
the second board member is not Anderson, it's Andrews.
Correct.
Yes, I want
Yes.
to make sure that our records reflect the other board member accurately.
Did I make a mistake?
It's okay, not on
No, this
yours,
is on our-
in our
It's
packet.
right in your trifold.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that we get ours
Lynn will
revised.
do me in otherwise.
No, you're fine. Just for the public record, I want to make sure that we have ours.
Commissioner Flagg finds these little things, you know, he just does.
Keep it straight.
We appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you
Thank you
very
all.
much for the report.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Sammons. Good morning, sir.
I have but one case today, case 2010-00713, 120 Coral Court, Palatka. Paul Segree, Linda Jo Haney is the guardian. This is a fine reduction case. The property was first seen on June 14, 2010. There was an unsafe mobile home on the property. Notice of violation was sent out on June 25, 2010, which gave 60 days to bring the property into compliance. Inspection was done on September 10th, 2010, and the property was still in violation. A notice of hearing was sent out on the same day to the owner. Special magistrate heard the case on November 18th, 2010. He gave the property owner until January 7th, 2011 to come into compliance, or a $25 a day fine would commence. Inspections were completed on January 14th and May 11th of 2011, and nothing had been done. 4 more inspections also occurred over the next 12 months with no progress. A notice of hearing to consider foreclosure and or abatement was sent out on May 30th, 2012. Special magistrate heard the case on July 19th, 2012, and he ordered the county to proceed with foreclosure and or abatement. The case went before the county commissioners again on September 11, 2012, and they authorized the abatement of this property. The property was abated on August 15, 2013. At about that time, Mr. Segree was deemed to be incapacitated by the courts. Linda Joy Haney, his guardian, now has requested a fine reduction hearing. The special magistrate heard her request and recommended that the board accept a total of $2,145, which includes the abatement lien and also the costs for doing the project of the $23,425 fine if it's paid within 90 days. Ms. Haney's not here, she's very busy, but she's in concurrence with that recommendation, and doesn't need 90 days to pay it. She's intending on paying it this Friday, if you concur with that recommendation.
You just said all the right things, Commissioners. What's your flavor here?
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of case
Motion on the floor.
2010-00713.
Second.
Second, further discussion?
Question.
Called question, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes, opposed, like sign. Thank
Thank
you, Mr. Sammons. Okay, item 10 on the agenda, Mr. Rick Leary, appointments.
I don't have anything beyond encouraging the board members to make appointments, sir.
Board members, with that being said, anything?
Working on one.
Working on one also.
All right. We'll go down item 11 then to County Attorney Stacy Manning.
I have nothing today.
Clerk of Court Tim Smith.
No items today, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Right. Commissioner comments.
Transportation meeting 2:00 p.m.
Yep.
So
there's
move
one.
we adjourn.
You tried. Commissioner
I-
Palliser, then Commissioner Harris.
Just a couple comments. One being, as I think a very serious and heavy hitter for the Better Place Plan. Any of the naysayers that were in the audience earlier that I don't see anymore, I think if they look at this list of roads and things done where this money was spent and what the Oversight Committee did, I think it's crystal clear as to the good that it does for our county and in helping ourselves grow. I think I heard someone say that, did we spend the money on this or that? When that thing was voted on, the criteria that that money could be spent on was laid out prior to. It didn't come about after the fact, oh, we want to buy this, let's just use the Better Place Man. It didn't work that way. The criteria was clearly defined on what that money could be used for, and that's all it's been used for. And I'm very much a supporter of it to this day. I have one other little thing else I want to talk about, and it's kind of funny that some of the things that were said today came about. I'd asked Mr. Salmons to prepare find a little video that I found on YouTube, I guess it was, and it's something from the archives of Putnam County. And if you don't want to watch it today, we can do it another day. It's 13 minutes long, isn't it? Yeah. And it's something that our forefathers did, the Chamber of Commerce and the Board of County Commissioners. We don't know the date on it, but we think it's in the 60s, maybe early 70s, that they did. Some of our older folks that might have been around in government during that time maybe have some ideas of it or where it came from.
Look over here.
He is the youngest member up here. That's
Tell us what it was.
Well, it's just talking about all the good things that Putnam County has to offer, and they talk about agriculture and the paper mill and this. I want to show it to the Logic Committee also because I think it's got some really good ideas of something we can do or produce. I think they've been talking about it in Logic that really promotes Putnam County in a positive light of every genre you can think of in that thing. I mean, it just goes in all
Let's go
different
a step further. Tomorrow, can we have it available in this room at 2 o'clock?
He's got it ready now.
Perfect.
Okay, well, no, but we have that meeting tomorrow, a stakeholders meeting.
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock. No.
yes.
I've got 10 o'clock.
Do you? 10
And
then
5
2?
o'clock.
And 5, okay.
Unless
10
you
o'clock?
Unless you want to do the 5.
No, I want both. Yeah, we do. Thank you.
It's very enlightening. I found it. I didn't want to. I wanted to watch it again. I mean, it was
I
very
saw
good. A lot of things that they talked about. I mean, they talked about the bass fishing, lakes,
Wonderful.
work,
Where is
everything.
that?
Just good stuff all the way around. And I
That letter
certainly
you
want to
gave
see that and make that available to the public.
Okay, Commissioner Harris.
Are we going to see it?
No, tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay. Well, I wanted to talk about tomorrow. I think it's very important because we're developing a strategic plan for economic development. And I'm just looking forward to that group gathering. We're going to meet at 10 o'clock and
4 o'clock. 10 and 4.
10 and 4. I've got 5.
Carl's got 4.
10 to 4, sir.
10 to 4, and then
6
5.
hours.
Oh,
And
Lord.
then 5 o'clock is the other one.
And then 5 o'clock will be a meeting where the public I guess the public can come to both if they
Right.
want to and have input. But at 5 o'clock, there's a presentation
Now,
to
the
the public.
10 to 4 is invitation and 5 o'clock's to public.
Is that how it is?
But I've been wrong on everything I just said, so.
No,
Yeah,
it's okay.
But I remember them
I
saying
think
that.
that's significant. It's important that we do that. And
Oh, yeah.
I'm glad that that has come about, and I just wanted to remind everyone, we know that jobs are our most important thing, and all the other things that we do are things to lead up to that. And I loved what they said in the report for the Better Place Plan, that it's an economic development engine, and indeed it is. And so
It has
I
been.
just hope everyone that can will come to the 5 o'clock one, at least at the end of the day, and see
Okay.
what's going on.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, the Azalea Festival is on its way here soon. The parade is Saturday, March 5th at 10 o'clock. So if you want to be involved, just let us know, and I will be helping Sam Deputy set up that parade. Currently, it's going to be on Main Street.
I thought Pelosi had to move it to Reed.
I've been working on that, and the city commissioners are being a little bit of a stumbling block, but this is, war's not over with yet.
Wherever it's going to be held, I'll be putting it together. So please come and be a part of that, and we look forward to that. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, you have anything else? I so move we adjourn. I don't want to cut you off.
Granted. Thank you, everybody.
See you all at 2 o'clock.
Good deal.